Hey guys, tonight we're going to explore one of the longest lasting, most widespread, and most fantastically wrong-headed medical treatments in all of human history. We're talking about a cure that was considered the absolute standard of care for over 2,000 years. Practiced by the most brilliant physicians from the time of Hippocrates to the age of the American Revolution. And that cure was bloodletting? The deliberate therapeutic removal of a patient's blood to cure them of a fever. It was a practice based on a complex and elegant theory, and it was almost always useless, and often fatal. Tonight, we're going to get a hands-on look at this disturbing practice. And let's be honest, you probably wouldn't have survived the cure, let alone the disease. Imagine going to your doctor with the flu, and their considered medical opinion is that you have too much blood. Their prescription is to make a cut in your arm and drain a pint of it into a bowl. With a knife, they likely just used to give someone a shave. They definitely didn't offer you a lollipop afterwards. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's a quiet and simple way to support the channel. And while you're at it, I'd love to see where and when you're tuning in from. Go ahead and drop your city and local time in the comments. It's always a little fascinating to see our community of history lovers spread across the globe. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your world smells of shaving soap and blood. It is a strange, but not unpleasant, combination. You are an apprentice to a man named Master Finch, and his shop. On a busy street in the city of Philadelphia in the year 1792 is a place of both grooming and of gore. For you are learning the strange, ancient, and respected craft of the barber surgeon. Outside the shop hangs the symbol of your trade, a wooden pole, painted with swirling red and white stripes. It is a symbol that everyone understands. The white represents the clean linen bandages of your profession, and the red, of course, represents the blood. It is both an advertisement and a warning. Your life is a constant education in this dual craft. You are learning two entirely different, yet intimately connected skill sets. In the mornings, you are a barber. You learn the fine art of whipping up a thick, fragrant lather of shaving soap in a porcelain mug. You learn how to sharpen a straight razor on a long leather strop, honing the edge until it is sharp enough to split a hair. You learn the steady-handed art of giving a clean shave to the city's gentlemen, of trimming their beards, and of powdering their fashionable wigs without getting the white dust all over their fine woolen coats. It is a craft of precision, of pleasantries, of making the respectable men of this new, bustling American republic look their best. But in the afternoons, you often become a surgeon, and your work takes on a grimmer, more serious tone. You learn the other side of the trade. You learn how to use the terrifying-looking metal key to extract a rotten tooth from a man's jaw, a procedure that involves more brute force than skill. You learn how to set a simple fractured bone, how to stitch a minor wound, and most importantly, you learn the high art of your profession, phlebotomy, the art of bloodletting. Master Finch's shop is one of the finest in Philadelphia. He is not a university-trained physician, a man who has studied the classics in Latin and Greek. He is a craftsman, a man who works with his hands. And one of the primary services he provides is to perform the bleedings that the physicians prescribe. This is the professional hierarchy of your time. A gentleman might feel unwell, suffering from a fever or an inflammation. He will summon a physician. A man like the great Dr. Benjamin Rush, the most famous doctor in your city. Dr. Rush will come to the man's house. He will make a learned diagnosis of an excess of the sanguine humor, and he will prescribe a bleeding. But the physician himself would never perform such a procedure. It is manual labor, beneath the dignity of a man of his learning. So he sends a note to your master, and you, the barber surgeon, the man who shaves the physician in the morning, are sent in the afternoon to bleed his patients. The rivalry between the two professions is a subject of endless debate. Is it a simple class distinction? The gentleman physician versus the working craftsman? Or is it a deeper, philosophical divide between the theoretical science of the university and the practical, hands-on craft of the surgeon? You do not know. You only know that the physicians get the prestige, and you get your hands bloody. You learn the tools of this strange and bloody art. You learn to use the lancet, a small, sharp, pointed blade, to make a clean, swift incision in the median cubital vein in the crook of a patient's elbow. You learn how to hold the brass bleeding bowl to catch the flow, measuring the amount of blood removed in ounces. You also learn to use the other, more specialized tools of the trade. There is the fleam, a small, folding knife with several blades of different sizes. For this, you do not simply make an incision, you place the blade against the vein, and you give the back of it a sharp tap with a small wooden mallet called a fleam stick. It is a crude but effective method, often used on patients with thick skin, or on horses. And then there is the scarifier. This is your master's proudest possession, a marvel of medical engineering. It is a small, spring-loaded brass box containing a dozen tiny, sharp blades. You place the box on the patient's skin. You press a lever, and the blades shoot out with a satisfying thwack, creating a series of shallow parallel cuts. This is used for cupping, where a heated glass cup is then placed over the cuts. Its cooling creating a vacuum that draws the blood out. It is considered a more refined and less intimidating method than the lancet. You spend your days practicing these techniques, often on your fellow apprentices. Much to their dismay, you learn the anatomy of the arm, the locations of the major veins. You learn how to apply a tourniquet, how to bandage a wound. You are becoming a skilled phlebotomist. Your life is good. Philadelphia is the temporary capital of the new United States of America. It is a city of great minds, of great wealth, of great ambition. It is the home of Benjamin Franklin, of Thomas Jefferson, of the new federal government. The city is growing, thriving, and you are learning a respected and profitable trade. There is always a need for a good shave. And there is, it seems, an even greater need for a good bleeding. You and your master are busy. A gentleman comes in complaining of a headache and a feeling of general malaise. The diagnosis is clear: an excess of blood. You are tasked with bleeding him. You perform the procedure with a new, professional confidence. You remove 8 ounces of his blood into your brass bowl. The gentleman declares that he feels lighter, clearer headed already. He pays your master handsomely and leaves, convinced he has just received the finest medical care in the world. This is the power of the theory that underpins your entire world. It is a theory that has stood, unquestioned, for 2,000 years, and it is a theory that is about to be put to the most terrible and catastrophic test imaginable. One hot, humid day in the late summer of 1793, you are sweeping the hair from the floor of your shop. You hear the gossip from the customers in the barber chairs. They are talking of a ship that has arrived at the port from the French colony of Saint-Domingue. In the West Indies, they say the ship is full of refugees, fleeing the slave rebellion there, and they say the ship has brought something else with it. A sickness, a terrible, swift, and deadly fever. You pay it little mind at first. There are always fevers in the summer, especially in the crowded, dockside neighborhoods of the city. But then you hear more stories. You hear that the fever is turning people's skin a ghastly yellow color before it kills them. You hear that they are vomiting up a black, foul-smelling substance that looks like coffee grounds. The city's physicians are calling it yellow fever. You overhear a conversation between 2 wealthy merchants in your shop. They are talking about fleeing the city for their country homes until the sickness passes. A now familiar pattern. A timeless reaction of the rich to the threat of pestilence. You are not worried. You are a man of medicine. You have your lancets, your leeches, your bleeding bowls, and you have your theory. The unquestioned wisdom of the ages. You are confident that you and your master, and the great physicians of your city, have the tools and the knowledge to fight whatever is coming. You are a barber surgeon in the most enlightened, most scientific city in the New World, and you are ready. The rumors that drift up from the docks of Philadelphia are at first easy to ignore. The talk of a fever on a ship from the West Indies is a common enough occurrence in a busy port city, especially during the hot, humid summer months. But the rumors persist, and they grow more specific. They are whispers of a sickness that turns the skin yellow and the vomit black. You are in your master's shop, honing a razor on a leather strop, when a wealthy merchant, a regular client for a shave and a wig powdering, speaks of it. The physicians are calling it yellow fever, he says, his voice a low murmur of concern. They say it is a pestilence of the most malignant kind. You ask your master, Mr. Finch, about it later. As you are cleaning the shop, what is it? A fever like this? What causes the body to turn upon itself with such violence? Your master wipes his hands on his apron, and he decides that your apprenticeship has reached a new stage. It is time for you to move beyond the simple, practical craft of the barber surgeon, and to understand the great, ancient, and elegant theory upon which it all rests. He leads you to the small room behind the shop, which serves as his study and his library. He takes down a large, leather-bound book, a translation of the works of the great Galen, the Roman physician whose wisdom has been the unquestioned foundation of all medicine for more than 1,500 years. To understand a fever, he begins, his voice taking on the solemn, instructional tone of a priest. You must first understand the man, and to understand the man, you must understand his humors. This is the beginning of your formal education in the great theory of the four humors. It is the central, unshakable truth of your medical world. The human body, your master explains, is composed of four essential fluids, or humors. First, there is blood, which corresponds to the element of air and the quality of being hot and moist. A person with a healthy abundance of blood is sanguine, cheerful, optimistic, and full of life. Second, there is phlegm, which corresponds to water and is cold and moist. A person with an excess of phlegm is phlegmatic, calm, slow, and unemotional. Third is yellow bile, or choler, which corresponds to fire and is hot and dry. A choleric person is angry, ambitious, and aggressive. And fourth, there is black bile, or melancholy, which corresponds to earth and is cold and dry. A melancholic person is sad, thoughtful, and depressive. A healthy man, your master explains, tracing the diagrams in the book with his finger, is a man whose four humors are in perfect balance. This state of health is called eucrasia, all sickness, all disease, from a simple cold to the most raging pestilence, is a state of imbalance, a dyscrasia. He then comes to the heart of the matter. A fever, he says, is the most common and most dangerous of ailments, and its cause is almost always the same. It is a plethora, an overabundance. The body has produced too much blood. The blood has become too hot, too rich. It agitates the other humors. It inflames the organs. It cooks the very spirit of the man. The body is, in essence, boiling over. The logic of it is simple, intuitive, and deeply satisfying. It explains everything. And so you ask, the cure? The cure is equally logical, he says. A flicker of pride in his eyes. If the body is suffering from an excess of blood, the physician's duty is to remove that excess. You must open a vein and drain away the foul. Superabundant humor. This cools the body. It calms the agitated spirits, and it allows the four humors to return to their natural. Healthy balance. It is the most powerful, most effective, and most heroic treatment in the physician's arsenal. You look at the tools of your trade, the sharp, pointed lancets, the brass bleeding bowls with a new sense of reverence. They are not just simple tools for a bloody craft. They are scientific instruments, designed to restore the fundamental harmony of the human body. Your work is not just a trade. It is a high and noble art. based on the accumulated wisdom of 2,000 years, in the weeks that follow, your master deepens your education. You learn to diagnose not just with your hands, but with your eyes. You learn the subtleties of the humoral constitution. A man with a ruddy, flushed complexion and a strong, bounding pulse is clearly of a sanguine temperament and is prone to fevers caused by an excess of blood. A pale, listless woman likely has an excess of phlegm, and her treatment should be with warming. Drying herbs. You feel like the world, in all its chaotic sickness, is being opened up to you. Its secrets revealed by this single, elegant, all-encompassing theory. You even learn the obscure but important art of inspecting the let blood itself. After a bleeding, your master will often set the bowl aside and let the blood cool and settle. After an hour, he will call you over to examine it. He shows you how the blood separates into different layers. A dark, heavy clot at the bottom, the black bile, a layer of red cells, the true blood, a pale whitish layer on top, the buffy coat, which is said to be the phlegm, and a yellowish serum, which is the collar. He teaches you to read the secrets of a man's illness in the color and consistency of these layers. Look here, he'll say, pointing at a thick, gelatinous, buffy coat, a clear sign of an excess of the phlegmatic humor. The man's lungs are likely inflamed. He claims, see a man's destiny in his own cooled and clotted blood. It seems to you like a form of divination, like reading tea leaves. But the certainty with which he does it is absolute. Why did this one theory, you wonder, dominate all of medical thought for so long? From the fields of ancient Greece to the bustling streets of your modern Philadelphia future, historians will debate this question endlessly. Was it the immense, almost religious, authority of the classical physicians like Hippocrates and Galen, whose words were treated like holy scripture? Was it because the theory was so complete, so logical, so satisfyingly symmetrical that it simply crowded out all other possible explanations? Or was it, perhaps, something more practical? In an age before real cures, in a world where physicians were largely helpless against the great diseases, did the dramatic, messy, and decisive act of bloodletting at least give both the doctor and the patient the feeling that something powerful was being done? You do not think of these things. You are an apprentice, and you are a believer. The theory is the truth. The practice is the cure. Meanwhile, the yellow fever in the city is getting worse. It has escaped the docks and is now spreading through the crowded, poorer neighborhoods of the city. The death toll is climbing. The city is beginning to panic. And then, the great Dr. Benjamin Rush, a signer of the Declaration of Independence and the most famous physician in America, makes a public declaration. He has studied the fever. He has examined its victims, and he has come to a conclusion. The yellow fever, he declares, is a disease of a violently inflammatory nature. It requires a bold, aggressive, and heroic response. The key to a cure, he announces in the public papers, is to drain the body of its fiery, corrupted humors. He issues his now famous prescription, a command that will echo through the coming months of terror. His words become a mantra for every physician and every barber surgeon in the city. We must, he writes, bleed and bleed and bleed again. The words are a call to arms, a declaration of war against the fever. You and your master, Mr. Finch. Read the doctor's pronouncement. You look at each other. There is a new, terrible light in your master's eyes, a look of profound, confident, and righteous purpose. You go to your workbench. You take out your lancets and your fleams. You begin to sharpen them. Your education is complete. Your theory is sound. And the greatest physician in the land has just given you your orders. You're great, miserable, and bloody work is about to begin. The rumors of the fever from the West Indies are a spark in the dry, hot tinder of the Philadelphia summer. Within weeks, the spark has become a conflagration. The yellow fever epidemic of 1793 falls upon your city not like a creeping fog, but like a sudden, violent summer thunderstorm. At first, it is confined to the crowded, unsanitary alleys near the docks, a disease of sailors and the poor. But it does not stay there. It begins to spread, house by house, street by street, with a terrifying speed. Moving from the waterfront into the heart of the prosperous, well-ordered city, you, in your barber surgeon's shop, witness the city's descent into panic. The confident, bustling energy of the nation's capital evaporates, replaced by a thick, palpable atmosphere of fear. The first sign is the exodus. The wealthy, who have the means to do so, flee the city. The great roads leading out of Philadelphia are choked with carriages piled high with furniture and frightened families. Even the government itself abandons its people. President Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and the rest of the federal government pack their bags and retreat to the healthier air of the countryside. It's reassuring to know that in a time of crisis, your leader's first instinct is to get as far away as possible for those left behind. The city becomes a prison of fear. The social life of the city ceases. The taverns and coffee houses fall silent. Neighbors no longer greet each other in the street. They cross to the other side, their faces covered with handkerchiefs soaked in vinegar. The belief is that the fever is carried on a pestilential effluvium, a foul air, and everyone is trying to avoid breathing the city's poison. You see cannons being fired in the public squares, the concussion and the gunpowder smoke believed to purify the contaminated atmosphere. It is a loud, dramatic, and entirely useless form of public health theater. The disease itself is a thing of swift and horrifying cruelty. You see its victims firsthand. It begins with a high fever, a splitting headache, and terrible pains in the back and limbs. But then comes the second, more terrifying stage. The victim's skin and eyes begin to turn a ghastly, unnatural yellow color, the symptom that gives the fever its name. And then comes the final, fatal stage, the black vomit. The patient begins to vomit up a dark, foul, coffee ground-like substance, a sign of massive internal hemorrhaging. From there, death is almost certain. As the death toll mounts, a new, grim routine takes over the city. The dead are no longer given proper funerals. They are collected at night by the drivers of the dead carts, their bodies often buried without coffins in mass graves. The constant, slow tolling of the church bells is the only music left in the city. In the midst of this chaos and terror, one man rises to become the central, commanding figure of the crisis, the city's most famous and respected physician, Dr. Benjamin Rush. Dr. Rush is a titan, a hero of the Revolution, a signer of the Declaration of Independence, a man of immense learning and even greater self-confidence. While other physicians flee the city, Dr. Rush stays. He works tirelessly, day and night, moving from one sickbed to another, a beacon of scientific authority in a city consumed by fear. And Dr. Rush has a theory. He is a man of the old school, a firm believer in the humoral theory you have been taught by your master. But he has adapted it for this new, American context. He believes the yellow fever is a single, violently inflammatory disease, a bilious remitting fever, which causes a great and dangerous tension in the body's blood vessels, and his cure is as heroic and as aggressive as the disease itself. He publishes his findings and his prescribed course of treatment in the city's newspapers. His words become a kind of medical scripture for the terrified city. The cure, he declares, is twofold. First, the body must be purged of its corrupting bile. He prescribes massive doses of calomel, a compound of mercury and jalap, a powerful purgative. This is designed to cleanse the bowels with a violent, almost explosive force. Second, and most importantly, the tension in the blood vessels must be released. And there is only one way to do that. The patient must be bled. Not just a few ounces to restore a minor imbalance. They must be bled aggressively, heroically, copiously. He advocates for removing pints of blood at a time, and for repeating the bleeding several times a day, until the patient faints or the fever breaks. This is the great, terrible prescription that will define the 1793 epidemic. Dr. Rush's cure for a deadly fever that causes massive internal bleeding is to administer a powerful laxative and then to drain the patient of most of their remaining blood. It is a cure that is, to future medical minds, almost indistinguishable from the disease itself. The legacy of Dr. Rush will be a subject of intense academic debate for centuries. Was he a great hero? A man who bravely stood by his city and fought the epidemic with the best and most advanced medical science of his day? Or was he an arrogant, dogmatic, and tragically mistaken zealot, whose aggressive and harmful treatments actually increased the death toll and killed more of his patients than the fever did? You, the barber surgeon's apprentice, are not a part of this debate. You are now a foot soldier in Dr. Rush's great medical army. His theory is now the law, and you and your master, with your lancets and your bleeding bowls, are its chief enforcers. The trickle of medical work you once did now becomes a flood. You and Master Finch are summoned to a dozen houses a day. The fine art of shaving and wig powdering is a forgotten luxury. Your entire existence is now dedicated to the grim, bloody, and relentless work of purging and bleeding the sick citizens of Philadelphia. You go from house to house, a small satchel with your tools in your hand. The city is a landscape of death. You see the yellow cloths hung on the doors of the sick, a sign of quarantine. You see the grieving families, their faces etched with fear, and you begin your terrible work. You are no longer an apprentice, tentatively learning the craft. You are now a practitioner, a man whose hands are constantly stained with the blood of his neighbors. The theory you learned in the quiet of your master's study is now your daily, desperate practice. You are at the very heart of the storm. The city is dying, and you, armed with the best science of your time, are about to discover that your cure is a part of the disease. You stand ready, your lancets sharpened, your bleeding bowls polished. Your great, miserable task, the task of draining a city of its blood in a desperate attempt to save it, is about to begin. The proclamation by Dr. Benjamin Rush acts as a declaration of war. The city of Philadelphia, led by the clarion call of its most famous physician, mobilizes for a great medical battle against the yellow fever, and you, the barber surgeon's apprentice, find yourself promoted by the sheer necessity of the crisis to a frontline soldier, the demand for your master's services, and by extension, your own, becomes overwhelming. The theoretical knowledge of your apprenticeship is over. Your education will now take place at the bedsides of the dying. Your first true test comes on a sweltering afternoon in late August. A desperate summons arrives from the home of a wealthy merchant whose house backs onto the infected dockside alleys. The physician has already been and gone, leaving behind a diagnosis of a highly bilious, inflammatory fever, and a stark, one-line prescription. Let 20 ounces of blood immediately. Master Finch looks at you, his eyes tired and grim. He has been up all night with another patient. You will go. Apprentice, he says, his voice heavy. You know the procedure. You have practiced. Your hand is steady. He is not asking you. He is telling you. Your apprenticeship is over. You gather your tools, your hands trembling almost imperceptibly. You wrap them in a clean linen cloth your sharpest, newly honed thumb lancet, a blue and white striped tourniquet, clean linen bandages, and the heavy, polished brass bleeding bowl, its inside marked with graduated lines to measure the ounces. You walk through the eerily quiet streets of the city, your small bag of tools feeling impossibly heavy. You arrive at the merchant's house. A terrified servant leads you upstairs to the master's bedchamber. The room is hot and dark, the heavy velvet curtains drawn tight against the supposedly pestilential afternoon sun. The air is thick with the smell of sickness and fear. The merchant's family is huddled in a corner, their faces pale, their eyes following your every move, on the great four-poster bed. The merchant himself is lying in a heap of sweat-soaked linens. He is delirious, muttering and thrashing weakly. His skin has the distinct, ghastly yellow tinge that is the signature of the disease. You approach the bed, your heart pounding. You are no longer a boy sweeping hair from a floor. You are a medical practitioner, a surgeon, and a man's life is in your hands. You try to project the calm, professional confidence of your master. I am here as directed by the physician. You say to the merchant's wife, your voice sounding strange and formal to your own ears. I must perform a bleeding to relieve the fever. She just nods, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and hope. She believes you are here to perform a miracle. You set your tools out on a small table beside the bed. You take the merchant's arm. It is hot and dry to the touch. You tie the tourniquet tightly around his bicep. The veins in the crook of his elbow swell, becoming thick. Blue ropes under his sallow skin. You select the most prominent one, the median cubital vein. This is the moment. Your first solo flight. You take the lancet in your hand. It is a beautiful and terrible instrument. Its steel polished to a mirror shine, its point exquisitely sharp. You remember your master's instructions. The cut must be swift, clean, and made along the length of the vein, not across it. You take a deep breath to steady your hand. The family is watching you. The only sound in the room is the sick man's ragged breathing and the frantic pounding of your own heart. You place the point of the lancet against the swollen vein and you press. The skin gives way, and a dark, almost black, stream of blood wells up and begins to trickle down the man's arm. You quickly place the brass bowl underneath to catch it. The blood flows sluggishly at first, thick and heavy. This, you have been taught, is a sign of the corruption of the humors, the inflammatory crescentum of the blood. It is a sign that the bleeding is necessary, that you are removing the very poison that is killing the man. You watch as the bowl begins to fill, your eyes fixed on the ounce markings on the inside. 4 ounces, 8 ounces. The blood is flowing more freely now, a brighter red color. This too is a good sign, showing that the tension in the vessels is being relieved. 12 ounces, 16 ounces. The patient, who had been thrashing, begins to grow still. His breathing becomes shallower. A cold, clammy sweat breaks out on his forehead. You know, from your studies, that these are the signs that the treatment is working. The body is releasing its morbid heat. The patient is approaching a state of syncope, or fainting, which Dr. Rush himself has written is a blessed state that signals the breaking of the fever. 20 ounces. The prescribed amount? You swiftly untie the tourniquet. The flow of blood stops. You press a clean linen pad to the small wound and bandage the man's arm tightly. It is done. You have successfully performed your first therapeutic bleeding. You are trembling, your own shirt soaked with a cold sweat. But you feel a surge of profound, professional pride. You have done it. You have followed the precepts of the great Dr. Rush. You have performed a heroic, life-saving intervention. The merchant's wife looks at you with eyes full of tears. But this time they are tears of gratitude. Her husband is no longer thrashing. He has sunk into a deep, quiet state of lassitude. He looks peaceful. You have saved him, sir. She whispers. You pack your tools, you wash your hands in the basin provided, and you leave the house. Your heart swelling with a sense of your own newfound importance and skill. You return the next morning with your master to check on the patient. You are proud of your work, and you expect to be praised for your steady hand. You expect to see the merchant awake, his fever gone, his senses returned. You find the house in a state of deep, quiet mourning. The merchant's wife is weeping. The children are huddled together, their faces a picture of grief. The merchant is dead. He died in the night. never waking from the deep. Peaceful state you had put him in. Your master examines the body. He looks at the bowl of yesterday's blood, which has now cooled and congealed into a dark, lumpy mass. He nods grimly. The fever was of a most malignant nature. He declares to the grieving widow, the putrefaction of the blood was too advanced. The apprentice's work was clean, he says, glancing at you, but the bleeding was insufficient. 20 ounces was not enough to overcome such a violent distemper. Had we taken 40, perhaps even 60, we might have saved him. You listen to these words, and the pride you had felt yesterday curdles into a cold, confusing horror. You have not failed because the treatment is wrong. You have failed because you were not aggressive enough. The cure did not fail, you failed the cure. This is the terrible, self-perpetuating logic of heroic medicine. If the patient dies, it is not because the heroic remedy has harmed them. It is because the remedy was not heroic enough. There is no room for doubt. There is only the demand for more. More bleeding, more purging. You leave that house of mourning a changed man. Your apprenticeship is truly over. You are no longer a student. Tentatively learning a craft, you have been initiated into the priesthood of a terrible and demanding religion. You now understand that your job is not just to let blood. It is to wage a relentless, heroic, and bloody war against disease. And you have been taught that in this war. There can be no half measures. You must be bold. You must be aggressive. You must bleed and bleed and bleed again. The death of the merchant is a grim and formative lesson. Your master's words echo in your mind. You did not fail because the cure is wrong, but because your application of it was not bold enough. In the face of a heroic disease, you must become a heroic physician. The lesson sinks deep into your soul. Your fear is replaced by a new, hard, and zealous resolve. You will not make the same mistake again. You will not be timid. You will be a true soldier in Dr. Rush's war against the yellow fever, as the epidemic tightens its grip on Philadelphia. Your master decides that your education must be accelerated. The lancet and the simple venesection, he explains, are your primary weapon, the heavy artillery in your medical arsenal. But a true surgeon must have more than just a cannon. He must have a full range of tools, each suited for a specific tactical situation. It is time for you to learn the finer, more specialized arts of bloodletting. Your first lesson is in the ancient and respected practice of leeching. You are called to the home of a wealthy widow who is suffering from a blinding headache and a delirium that the attending physician has diagnosed as a violent inflammation of the brain. The physician has prescribed a local bleeding from the temples to draw the excess hot blood away from the afflicted organ. This is a delicate area where the lancet is too imprecise, too dangerous. This is a job for the leeches. You return to the shop with your master to collect the primary instruments for this procedure in a large glass jar on a high shelf. You keep your supply of medicinal leeches. They are beautiful and repulsive creatures. They're dark, segmented bodies moving with a slow, hypnotic grace in the murky water. They are your tiny, living, blood-sucking employees. You carry the jar to the widow's house. You watch as your master performs the procedure. He takes 2 of the leeches from the jar and places them in a small wine glass to dry them slightly. Which, he explains, makes them hungrier. The patient, a frail old woman, lies still in her bed, her eyes closed, moaning softly. Your master takes the first leech and applies it to her right temple. The creature latches on instantly, its 3-bladed jaw making a tiny, star-shaped, and almost painless incision. You watch, fascinated, as its body begins to swell, to become plump and engorged with the patient's bad blood. He applies the second leech to the other temple. For the next hour, you simply wait as the leeches do their quiet, methodical work. They are silent, efficient, and single-minded when they have drunk their fill. Their bodies swollen to 3 times their normal size. They simply detach and fall away. leaving behind their small signature, tri-radiate wound, which will continue to bleed for some time thanks to the anticoagulant in their saliva. You have just witnessed a perfect, targeted, and deeply respected medical procedure. You have, in theory, just relieved the pressure on the woman's inflamed brain. She is now quieter. More still. This is seen as a great success. The fact that she is also now slipping into a coma is seen as a sign that her agitated spirits are finally at peace. Your next lesson is in the even more ancient art of cupping. This practice, your master tells you, was used by the Egyptians and the Greeks. It is a way to draw the bad humors not from a single vein, but from a wider area of the body. You learn dry cupping first. A man comes to the shop complaining of a deep pain in his back. Your master has him lie on a table. He takes a small, thick-walled glass cup. He places a small piece of burning linen inside it for a moment to consume the oxygen, then swiftly inverts the cup and places it on the man's back. As the air inside the cup cools, it creates a powerful vacuum, and the man's skin is drawn up into the cup, forming a large, raised, reddish dome. It is a strange sight. Your master places a dozen of these cups along the man's spine. The theory is that this suction is drawing the stagnant. Painful humors to the surface. After 20 minutes, the cups are removed, leaving behind a series of perfectly circular, dark purple bruises that look like the marks of some giant. Otherworldly octopus. The man claims his back feels looser, the pain lessened, but the true art is in wet cupping, which combines this suction with bleeding. This requires the use of your most intimidating and ingenious tool, the scarifier. The scarifier is a small brass box, often ornately engraved. It is a clever little box of horrors. Inside, a dozen tiny, razor-sharp blades are attached to a spring-loaded mechanism. You are called to the home of a man suffering from an inflammation of the lungs. Your master declares that you must draw the hot, corrupted blood away from his chest. He has the man sit up. He places the scarifier on the man's upper back. He presses the lever. With a loud thwack, the 12 blades shoot out, make their incision, and retract in a fraction of a second. It leaves behind a neat, bloody grid of shallow, parallel cuts. It is a marvel of medical efficiency, a way to make 12 cuts at once for the busy surgeon on the go, before the bleeding can stop. Your master quickly applies the heated cups over the incisions. The vacuum now draws out not just skin, but blood. You watch as the glass cups slowly fill with a dark, thick, and clotted fluid. It is a horrifying and mesmerizing sight. You, the apprentice, begin to practice these arts yourself. You become adept with the leeches. You learn the precise timing of the heated cup. You master the satisfying, terrible violence of the spring-loaded scarifier. You and your master are now armed with a full and terrible arsenal. For a general fever, the lancet. For a headache, the leeches. For a pain in the back, or the lungs. The scarifier and the cups. For every ailment, it seems. There is a corresponding way to remove a patient's blood. You feel confident, powerful. You are no longer just a boy who can give a shave. You are a true surgeon, a master of the complex and varied arts of phlebotomy. As you become more skilled, you reflect on the nature of these treatments. They are all based on the same flawed theory. But do they have any real effect? The man whose back was cupped claimed to feel better. The widow with the headache did grow quiet. Future historians will debate this. Was it all just a powerful placebo, a dramatic and bloody piece of theater that convinced both the patient and the doctor that something effective was being done? Or did some of these practices, by complete accident, have a minor, temporary effect? Did the local trauma of cupping create a counter-irritation that briefly distracted from a deeper pain? Did the application of leeches, with their anticoagulant saliva, have some minor, localized effect on blood flow? The questions are unanswerable. You only know what you see: a city full of sick and terrified people, and a medical establishment that is utterly convinced that the answer to their suffering is to make them bleed. Your shop is transformed. The barbering pole outside still turns. But fewer and fewer men come for a simple shave. The chairs in your waiting room are now filled with the families of the sick, their faces pale with fear, waiting for you or your master to return from a house call. The shelves where the shaving soaps and the wig powders once sat are now lined with jars of leeches, with boxes of cupping glasses, with neatly wrapped rows of sharpened lancets. The clean, soapy smell of the barber shop has been completely overpowered by the metallic tang of blood and the sharp, vinegary scent of the cloths used to clean your tools. Your apprenticeship is over. You have mastered your craft. You look at your array of strange, beautiful, and terrible tools, and you no longer feel any fear or hesitation. You feel only a grim and terrible purpose. You are a soldier, and these are your weapons. And as the yellow fever epidemic reaches its horrifying peak, you will be called upon to use them again, and again, and again. The death of the merchant is not a moment for quiet reflection. It is a catalyst. Your master's terrible, inverted logic that the death was a result of too little bleeding. Not too much becomes the new gospel. In a city seized by a collective, fever-induced panic, the cautious, measured medicine of the past is abandoned. The time for gentle rebalancing is over. The age of heroic, aggressive, and catastrophic medicine has begun. September 1793. The epidemic reaches its horrifying peak. The city of Philadelphia is a ghost town, its streets empty, its houses filled with the sick and the dying. The relentless, humid heat of the summer continues, and it feels as if the very air you breathe is sick. The only sounds are the constant, mournful tolling of the church bells and the slow, nightly rumble of the dead carts. Your life and your master's is now an endless, waking nightmare of house calls. You no longer wait for summonses to arrive at the shop. The physicians of the city have created a central committee to coordinate the response, and you are given a list each morning, a schedule of the dying, a timetable of houses that require your services. The barbering side of your shop is a forgotten memory. The chairs are empty, the razors untouched. Your shop is now nothing more than a place to store your tools and to sleep for a few precious, exhausted hours. Your entire existence has been reduced to the grim, repetitive, and bloody work of phlebotomy. You move through the city like a specter, your small bag of tools in your hand. You are now a familiar and dreaded sight in the streets. People who are still healthy see you coming and they hurry away, crossing themselves, their faces masks of terror. You are no longer just a surgeon. You are an omen of death. You have become the most sought-after man in Philadelphia. Everyone is dying to see you. The practice of bleeding, under the fanatical influence of Dr. Rush, has become more extreme. You are no longer removing a polite 8 or 10 ounces of blood. The new doctrine demands copious, heroic bleeding. You are now expected to remove 20, 30, even 40 ounces of blood from a single patient in a single sitting. You are to bleed them until they faint. A state Dr. Rush calls the blessed syncope, and if the fever returns when they wake, you are to bleed them again. Your days become a blur of identical, horrific scenes. You enter a hot, dark, silent room. A family huddles in the corner, their faces etched with grief. A body lies on the bed, burning with fever, the skin a terrible, jaundiced yellow. You do your work. You tie the tourniquet. You find the vein. You open it with your lancet, and you watch the blood flow. The blood of the yellow fever victims, you notice, is different. It is often dark, thick, almost black. Dr. Rush has written about this. He calls it putrid blood, and he teaches that its darkness is a sign of its corruption. You must, he insists, Keep bleeding the patient until the blood that flows from their veins runs clear and red again. Only then has the poison been removed, and so you do. You drain pint after pint of the dark blood from your already weakened, anemic patients, waiting for a sign of purification that will never come. The bleeding bowl is now your primary diagnostic tool. If the patient is still alive after you have taken 2 pints of blood, your master instructs you. It is a sign that their constitution is strong, and that they can, and should, endure another bleeding. It is a terrifyingly simple and brutally circular logic. The city, in its desperation, has established an emergency hospital at Bush Hill, a great mansion outside the city limits. But it is a place of such horror, so understaffed and overwhelmed, that it becomes known as the city's pest house. To be sent to Bush and Hill is to be sent to die, and so people fight to stay in their own homes, to be treated by men like you, to be bled to death in the comfort of their own beds. In the midst of this horror, a new group of heroes emerges. The members of the Free African Society. The white nurses and caregivers have either fled the city or have died. A tragic and incorrect. Belief spreads that people of African descent are immune to the yellow fever. And so, the brave men and women of this society volunteer. They become the city's nurses, its caregivers, its burial workers. You see them in the sick rooms, their presence a quiet, compassionate force. They clean the sick. They offer them water. They hold their hands as they die. Their gentle human care is a stark and terrible contrast to your own violent, bloody, and scientific cures. This is a great historical debate that will linger for centuries. Was the belief in black immunity a simple, if flawed, medical observation, or was it a convenient, racially motivated assumption that allowed the city's white establishment to push the most dangerous and difficult work of the epidemic onto its African American population? You do not know. You only know that you see these volunteers perform acts of selfless bravery every single day. While you perform acts of what you are beginning to fear is medical butchery, the work takes a terrible toll on you. You are exhausted. You live on a diet of stale bread and brandy. The alcohol a necessary fuel to dull your senses and your conscience. You are as thin and as gaunt as your patients. You are a walking ghost, haunted by the faces of the dozens of people you have bled. The dozens of people who have died at your own hand. You no longer see them as people. You cannot afford to. They are simply bodies. They are systems of humors that must be rebalanced. You have achieved a state of complete professional and soul-destroying detachment. You have become a machine for letting blood. One afternoon, you and your master are called to the home of a French merchant, the French community in Philadelphia. You have heard is resisting Dr. Rush's methods. Their own physicians, trained in a different school of thought, are advocating for gentler treatments, rest, fresh air, cool drinks, and soothing herbal remedies. But this merchant, in his panic, has summoned a physician who is a disciple of Dr. Rush, and that physician has prescribed a massive, aggressive bleeding. You and your master enter the room, and you find yourselves in the middle of a medical argument. A young French doctor is there, and he is pleading with the family not to allow the bleeding. You will kill him, the French doctor says. His voice passionate. His body is already weak. You must support his strength, not drain it away. Your master, Mr. Finch, is incensed. He sees this as a challenge to his authority, to the entire medical establishment of the city. Sir, he says, his voice cold with contempt, we are following the prescriptions of the great doctor. Rush himself. You and your vegetable teas are no match for a pestilence of this magnitude. You stand back and you watch this debate. You watch the terrified family, caught between the two opposing theories, the old, heroic, aggressive medicine versus a new, gentler, more supportive approach. They choose the familiar. They choose the authority of Dr. Rush. They ask the French doctor to leave. You and your master perform the bleeding. The Frenchman leaves the house, his face a mask of despair and disgust. You bleed the merchant of nearly 40 ounces of his blood. He dies that evening. You return to your shop, your clothes stiff with dried blood. You are cleaning your lancets. The familiar, methodical task, small comfort in the chaos, and you look at your own reflection in the polished surface of a brass bleeding bowl. You see a pale, skeletal face with dark, haunted eyes. You do not recognize the man you see. The city of Philadelphia is being drained of its blood, and you realize, as you stare at your own ghostly reflection, that the city is not the only thing being bled dry. The war against the fever is draining the life, the humanity, the very soul out of you. You are a successful and respected practitioner of the most advanced medical science of your time, and you have never felt more like a monster. The city of Philadelphia has become a great, open-air laboratory for the theories of Dr. Benjamin Rush, and you are one of his chief technicians, a dutiful, blood-stained, and increasingly numb instrument of his heroic medicine. The peak of the epidemic, in the stifling, desperate month of September, is a blur of work so relentless and so horrifying that your mind can only process it as a series of disconnected, nightmarish vignettes. You are in the garret of a poor shoemaker, bleeding his wife while their 3 small children watch in silent terror. You are in the grand bedroom of a wealthy shipping magnate, bleeding him for the 3rd time in 2 days. His family pleading with you to take more, to be more aggressive, because the fever has not yet broken. You are in your own shop, so exhausted you can barely stand, sharpening a dozen lancets by candlelight, preparing for the next day's river of blood. You become a connoisseur of blood. You see how it flows differently from the young and the old, the strong and the weak. You see the dark, thick, putrid blood that Dr. Rush writes about. You bleed and bleed, waiting for it to run clear and red, a sign of purification that never seems to come. Your hands, your apron, your very soul feels stained, and in the midst of this mechanical, soul-numbing routine, you begin to notice a pattern. It is a quiet, deeply disturbing pattern that contradicts everything you have been taught. Everything you believe you are doing, you begin to notice, with a statistical clarity that your work as a record keeper has trained you for, that the people you treat with the most aggressive, most heroic methods seem to die the fastest. You are called to the home of a wealthy lawyer. He is a strong, robust man, and his family has the money to afford the very best care. They summon you and your master 3 times a day. You bleed him copiously. You administer the powerful mercury purges. You follow the teachings of Dr. Rush to the very letter. The lawyer is dead in 3 days. The next day, you are called to the home of a poor washerwoman, a widow who lives in a single room with her son. She has the same fever, but she has no money. She can only afford a single, small bleeding. You take 10 ounces of her blood, a token amount by Dr. Rush's standards, and you leave, knowing you will not be called back. A week later, you pass her street on another call, and you see her son, sitting on the steps. You ask about his mother. He tells you the fever has broken. She is weak, but she is alive. The observation is a splinter in your mind. It could be a coincidence. The woman's constitution may have been stronger, the fever less malignant, but you cannot shake the thought. You start to keep a secret. Mental ledger. In your mind, you track your patients. The ones who are bled once, the ones who are bled repeatedly, and you see the pattern confirm itself again and again. The more you bleed them, the weaker they become, the more you purge them. The more their own life force seems to drain away with the flux. The weakness and the fainting spells, which your master calls the blessed syncope and a sign of the fever breaking, now look to you like something else entirely. They look like the simple, brutal, and predictable effects of massive blood loss. You are beginning to understand a terrible truth. You are not fighting the fever. You are fighting the patient's own strength. Your cure is not a cure at all. It is an assault on the body's ability to heal itself. Dr. Rush's cure for a deadly fever is like trying to cure a fear of heights by throwing a man from a roof. The original problem may be solved, but the side effects are catastrophic. You are caught in a terrible crisis of faith. Not a religious faith, but a scientific one. The evidence of your own two eyes. The data you are collecting at every single bedside is now indirect. Violent conflict with the established. 2,000-year-old medical theory of your entire profession. This is the great and terrible dilemma of a scientific revolution. What do you do when you see a truth that contradicts everything you have been taught by your masters? Everything that every respected expert in the world believes. You try to voice your doubts, tentatively, to your master. Mr. Finch, you are cleaning the bleeding bowls one evening in the shop. Master, you begin. Your voice quiet. I have noticed a strange thing. The patients who receive the most vigorous bleedings, they seem to fare the worst. Mr. Finch stops his work and looks at you. His eyes hard. That is the talk of a man who is losing his nerve. Apprentice, he says. His voice cold. The fever is the enemy. It is a great fire. We must not be timid in our attempts to quench it. To do so is to abandon our patients to the disease. Do not mistake the weakness caused by the cure for a weakness of the cure itself. You are questioning the wisdom of Dr. Rush and of Galen himself. Do not let me hear such talk again. His rebuke silences you. You are alone with your terrible, heretical observation. You are a man who has discovered that the world is round, while living in a society that is utterly, unshakably convinced that it is flat, and that is willing to punish anyone who says otherwise. The city of Philadelphia has lost nearly 5,000 people, 10% of its population, but you are now beginning to wonder how many of those 5,000 were killed by the fever, and how many were killed by the cure. One afternoon, you witness a scene that crystallizes your doubts into a hard, sharp, and permanent conviction. You are summoned to assist a senior physician, a colleague of Dr. Rush, with a particularly difficult case. When you arrive, you see that the patient, a young man, has already died, but the physician is not preparing the body for burial. He is preparing to bleed the corpse. This is the practice of post-mortem bleeding, a ghoulish and obscure corner of your medical science. The belief is that by examining the blood and the internal organs of a dead man, you can learn things that will help you to treat the living. The physician makes a great show of it, cutting into the dead man's arm, letting the now cold and congealed blood drip into a bowl, and studying it with a look of intense scientific interest. You look at this scene, at this pointless, grotesque, and self-important act of medical theater, and the entire theoretical edifice of your profession crumbles into dust before your eyes. You see it for what it is, a desperate, arrogant, and entirely useless ritual, performed by men who are so blinded by their own theories that they can no longer see the simple, terrible truth before them. Your breaking point comes a few days later. You are called, alone this time, to the home of a young seamstress. She is a girl of perhaps 19. She lives alone in a small, clean room, and she is in the first stages of the fever. She has saved a few shillings, and she has used them to summon you. She looks at you with wide, terrified eyes. You lay out your tools. You tie the tourniquet around her thin arm. You take out your sharp, clean lancet. You are about to perform the procedure. You are about to open her vein and drain away her life, just as you have been taught. But you look at her pale, frightened face, and you see the faces of all the others, the merchant, the lawyer, the dozens of other patients you have bled, who have then died. You see the French doctor from your memory, pleading with you that you will kill the patient, and you cannot do it. Your hand, holding the lancet, begins to tremble. You cannot be the agent of this cure anymore. You take a deep breath, and in a quiet, personal, and profoundly significant act of rebellion, you change course. You press the tip of the lancet to her skin, but you do not make a deep incision. You make a tiny, shallow scratch, just enough to draw a few symbolic drops of blood. You let the few drops fall into the great brass bowl, where they look like a tiny, pathetic stain. There, you say to the girl, your voice surprisingly steady, "It is done. I have taken enough to relieve the tension of the fever." You take the few coins she offers you, and you give her a new and heretical prescription. Do not let anyone else bleed you, you tell her. Your voice a low whisper. Keep cool, drink as much water as you can, and rest. You leave her small room and you walk out into the street. You do not know if the girl will live or die. You only know that. For the first time. Her fate will be determined by the strength of her own body and the virulence of the disease, and not by the deadly intervention of your own misguided science. You have committed your first act of medical malpractice. You have defied the wisdom of your masters, the protocols of your profession, the great Dr. Rush himself. You have chosen to trust the quiet, terrifying evidence of your own eyes over the 2,000-year-old dogma of your textbooks. You have chosen to do nothing, and it is the most heroic and most terrifying thing you have ever done. Your act of quiet. Secret rebellion in the seamstress's small room has changed you. You have defied your master. You have defied the great Dr. Rush. You have defied 2,000 years of accepted medical wisdom. And you are terrified. You fully expect the young woman to die, to become another ghost that will haunt your conscience. Her death a direct result of your timidity, your failure to apply the heroic cure. You spend the next few days in a state of anxious dread, avoiding your master's eye, expecting at any moment to hear the news of her death. But the news does not come. At the same time, you cannot escape the bloody work of your trade. The epidemic still rages, and Dr. Rush's prescribed cure is still the law of the city. You are still sent out on your grim errands, your bag of lancets and bowls in your hand. But now, your work is a torture. Every time you open a vein, every time you see the dark blood flow into the bowl, you are racked with a new and terrible doubt. Are you a healer, or are you a killer? Is this a cure, or is it a wound? The words of the French doctor you met at the merchant's house, the man who had pleaded with you not to bleed his patient, echo in your mind. You will kill him. He had said, you must support his strength, not drain it away. At the time, his words had seemed like the babbling of a fool, a cowardly refusal to engage in the necessary battle against the disease. Now, they sound like a prophecy. You decide you must find him. You must understand his methods. This quiet rebellion in your soul needs a new theory to support it, a new path to follow. You learn that most of the French physicians who had fled the slave rebellion in Saint-Domingue, and who had been caught in Philadelphia by the epidemic, have volunteered their services at the new fever hospital at Bush Hill. Bush Hill is a name that is spoken with dread throughout the city. It is a great mansion on a hill outside the city, hastily converted into an emergency hospital in the early weeks of the epidemic. It was a place of chaos and horror, a pest house where the sick were sent to die in squalor, with little care or comfort. But you hear that something has changed. A wealthy merchant named Stephen Girard, a man renowned for his courage and philanthropy, has taken personal charge of the hospital's administration, and he has appointed one of the French physicians, a man named Jean Devez, to run it. You make a decision. You cannot continue your work as your master's agent of heroic bleeding. You tell Mr. Finch that you wish to volunteer at Bush Hill to gain more experience with the fever. He agrees. Perhaps relieved to be rid of an apprentice whose nerve he can see is failing. You walk the long road out to Bush Hill, and as you pass through its gates, you enter a different world. The chaos and filth you had heard about are gone. Under the strict, efficient administration of Stephen Girard, who, in a stunning act of bravery, personally works in the wards, carrying patients and cleaning up their filth, The hospital has been transformed. It is clean, it is orderly, and it is quiet. But it is the medical philosophy here that is the true revolution. You are introduced to Dr. Devise. He explains his methods to you, and they are the polar opposite of the methods of Dr. Rush, where Rush sees the fever as an enemy to be violently attacked. Devise sees it as a storm to be weathered, where Rush seeks to drain the body of its corrupting humors. Devise seeks to support the body's own vital strength. His medicine is not one of heroic intervention. It is one of gentle, supportive care. The treatments at Bush Hill are shockingly simple. There are no bleeding bowls, no lancets, no purges of mercury. The patients are given clean beds. The windows of the wards are kept wide open. To allow the fresh country air to circulate, the patients are gently bathed in cool water to bring down their fevers, and they are given nourishing food and drink chicken broth, barley water, and small, regular doses of wine and Peruvian bark, a substance known to help with fevers. The French doctor's entire philosophy is to do no harm. It is to keep the patient comfortable, hydrated, and rested, and to allow the body's own natural healing powers to fight the disease in a city that is obsessed with a violent, aggressive cure. The French method is a radical act of therapeutic gentleness. You begin to work at Bush Hill. Your old skills are useless here. You put away your lancets and your scarifiers. You are no longer a surgeon. You are a nurse. You spend your days not letting blood, but changing soiled linens, not administering purges, but offering a cup of cool water, a spoonful of broth. You are cleaning, you are comforting, you are supporting, and you are seeing something you have not seen in weeks. You are seeing people survive. Not everyone, of course. The yellow fever is still a deadly disease. Many of the patients who are brought to Bush Hill are already too far gone, but the mortality rate here is a fraction of what it is in the city. The wards are not filled with the sounds of agony and despair, but with a kind of quiet, hopeful calm. You are at the very heart of the great medical conflict of your time. In the city, Dr. Rush and his disciples are waging their heroic, bloody war, bleeding and purging their way through the population. And here, at Bush Hill, Dr. Devise and his colleagues are practicing a quiet, patient medicine of comfort and care. Future historians will engage in a fierce statistical debate over this very conflict. They will analyze the records, the mortality rates, trying to prove which method was superior. Dr. Rush, after the epidemic, would publish his own figures, claiming a great success. But most later analysis would suggest that the gentle, supportive care of the French physicians resulted in a significantly lower death rate than Rush's heroic interventions. The cure, it seemed, was indeed more dangerous than the disease. One afternoon, you are tending to a patient, a young clerk who was brought in near death, but who is now past the crisis. His fever has broken, and he is sleeping peacefully. You look at his calm, resting face, and you think of the merchant you bled on your first solo call, the man who died in a state of blessed syncope after you had drained 20 ounces of his blood. The truth is so simple, so obvious, that it is almost painful. You have been trained as a craftsman of a terrible, violent, and mistaken art. You thought you were a soldier, but you were just a butcher. The epidemic begins to wane with the coming of the first hard frost in late October, which kills the mosquitoes that carry the fever. The city slowly, cautiously, begins to return to life. The crisis is over. You have been working at Bush Hill for nearly 2 months. You are exhausted, but you are a different man. You have unlearned the heroic certainties of your old master, and you have learned the quiet, humble truths of a different kind of medicine. On one of your last days at the hospital, you decide to walk back into the city to check on the young seamstress, the girl you had spared from the lancet, the patient whose life had been the catalyst for your own crisis of conscience. You find her small room. You knock on the door, your heart pounding. She opens it herself. She is thin. She is pale, but she is alive. She is smiling. She tells you that her fever broke a few days after your visit, and that she has been slowly regaining her strength ever since. She thanks you, telling you that you are a great and skilled physician, that your bleeding saved her life. You look at her, and you feel a strange, dizzying mixture of relief and profound, cosmic irony. She has survived, not because of your skill, but because of your lack of it. She has survived because you, for the first time, chose to do nothing. You walk away from her small room. The bag with your surgical tools, your lancets, your scarifiers, your leeches feeling heavy and obscene in your hand. You know you can never go back to your old life, to your old master. Your apprenticeship in the bloody art of heroic medicine is over. Your true education, the education of a real healer, has only just begun. The great Philadelphia frost of 1793 is a mercy. It kills the clouds of mosquitoes that have plagued the city, and with their passing, the yellow fever epidemic finally, blessedly, comes to an end. The city, or what is left of it, breathes a collective, ragged sigh of relief. The church bells, which have tolled for the dead for 3 solid months, fall silent. The rumble of the dead cart ceases. The city has survived. You emerge from your work at the Bush Hill Hospital into this new, quiet world. You are a changed man. The apprentice who entered the epidemic with a blind faith in the heroic science of his masters has been replaced by a man with a deep and abiding doubt in his heart. You have seen a different way of healing, a gentler, more compassionate, and, you are convinced, a more effective one. You know you cannot return to your old life, but you feel a duty to your master. Mr. Finch, you must go to him to explain what you have seen, what you now believe. You must try to make him understand. You walk back to the familiar shop with the red and white pole outside. The city is slowly returning to life. The healthy who had fled are trickling back, their carriages returning to their grand houses. The shops are beginning to unbar their doors, but it is a scarred and grieving city. 1 in every 10 people is gone. There is not a single family that has not been touched by loss. You enter your old workshop. Mr. Finch is there, cleaning his lancets. He himself looks like a survivor of a long and brutal war. He is thinner, older, and the confident. Authoritative air he once had is gone, replaced by a kind of grim, haunted weariness. You try to tell him what you have learned. You speak of your time at Bush Hill. You speak of the French physician, Dr. Devez. You speak of his methods, the fresh air, the cool baths, the nourishing broths, the supportive care. You tell him of the shockingly low mortality rate you witnessed there. You tell him that you believe the constant bleeding and purging, the heroic methods of Dr. Rush were not just ineffective, but actively harmful. You tell him you believe you have been killing people, not curing them. Curing. Your master listens to you in silence, his face growing harder and colder with every word you speak. When you are finished, he looks at you, and there is no understanding in his eyes. There is only a deep, profound, and angry sense of betrayal. So, he says, his voice a low, dangerous growl, you have been listening to the Frenchmen, to their cowardly, effeminate, do-nothing medicine. I have been listening to the evidence of my own eyes. Master, you reply, your own voice quiet but firm. Their patients lived. Ours died. Our patients died because their disease was more malignant, he retorts, his voice rising. They died because we were not bold enough, Dr. Rush himself has said so. This is not a time for weakness, for vegetable teas and waiting for nature to do its work. It is a time for heroic action. You have lost your nerve. Boy, the French have filled your head with their cowardly, radical, revolutionary nonsense. You realize, in that moment, that you cannot reach him. His entire professional identity, his pride, his very sense of self. is built upon the foundation of the heroic tradition. To accept what you are saying would be for him to admit that his entire life's work has been a terrible mistake. That he, a good and decent man, has been an agent of death. It is a truth too monstrous for him to bear. The gap between his worldview and yours is now unbridgeable. Just then, the bell above the shop door jingles. A man enters, supporting his teenage son. The boy is pale, his breathing shallow, his face slick with the sweat of a high fever. It is not the yellow fever, but a common inflammation of the lungs. A disease that is rife in the cold, damp aftermath of the epidemic. The man is a friend of your master. He has brought his son here for the only cure he knows. Finch, he says, his voice thick with worry. The physician has seen him. He says the boy's blood is inflamed. He has prescribed a bleeding, a generous one. Your master looks at the boy, and then he looks at you. A hard, challenging glint comes into his eyes. This is the moment of your final test. This is where you're new. Radical theories meet the hard reality of your old craft. Master Finch turns to the back of the shop to fetch a fresh bowl. He looks over his shoulder at you. Apprentice, he says, his voice cold and deliberate. Prepare your lancet. You will bleed the boy. Show me that you have not forgotten your training. You look at the sick boy, who is now sitting on the barber's chair. He is weak. He is frightened. His body is already struggling to fight a powerful illness. And you are being ordered to open his veins and drain away his life's blood, to weaken him further, to perhaps push him over the edge from which he cannot return. You think of the seamstress, the girl you spared. You think of the patients at Bush Hill, nursed back to health with nothing more than water and rest. You think of all the others, the ones you bled, who now lie in the city's mass graves. You look at your master, at his hard, expectant face, and you look at the sharp, gleaming lancet in your hand, and you make your choice. You slowly, deliberately, place the lancet down on the wooden counter. No, you say. Your voice quiet, but it rings with an absolute, unshakable finality in the silent shop. Your master turns and stares at you, his face a thundercloud of disbelief and rage. What did you say? I will not do it, master, you say. Looking him directly in the eye, I will not bleed this boy. It will harm him. It may kill him. I will have no part in it. You turn to the boy's father. Sir, your son needs rest. He needs warmth. He needs nourishing soup. He does not need to be bled. The silence in the room is thick and heavy. The father looks from you to your master, his face a mask of confusion. Master Finch's face is purple with rage. This is an act of open, public insubordination. You have shamed him in his own shop, in front of his own friend. You have rejected his authority, his craft, his entire world. Then you are no apprentice of mine, he says. His voice a low, trembling hiss. You are a coward and a fool. You have been corrupted by foreign ideas. Take your tools and get out of my shop. I never want to see your face again. The words are a final, brutal severing. You have been cast out. You do not argue. You simply nod. You go to your small workbench and you gather your tools, your lancets, your scarifiers, your glass cupping jars, your brass bleeding bowls. You place them carefully in their leather bag. You walk to the door. You do not look back at your master. You do not look at the sick boy. You walk out of the shop, the bell above the door ringing a final, mournful farewell. You have been expelled from your trade, from your home, from the only life you have ever known. You are alone, your career in ruins, your future a complete and terrifying blank. You have nothing left but your own conscience, and a radical, dangerous, and deeply unpopular conviction that the first duty of a healer is to do no harm. You walk through the streets of Philadelphia, your bag of now useless tools in your hand. You look at your own surgeon's gown, the gown you once wore with such pride. It has a faint, dark stain on the sleeve. a ghost of old blood that would never quite wash out. It is the emblem of the profession you are now leaving behind. You walk towards the Delaware River. You stand on the edge of the docks, the cold November wind whipping at your coat. You open your bag, and one by one, you take out the beautiful, terrible instruments of your former trade, the lancet, the fleam, the scarifier, the bleeding bowl, and you throw them, one by one, into the cold, gray, and unforgiving waters of the river. It is a final, symbolic act of renunciation. Your old life is over. You throw your lancets into the Delaware River, and with that single act of renunciation, your old life sinks into the cold, gray water. You are no longer a barber surgeon. You are no longer an apprentice. You are a man with no trade and no master, armed only with a dangerous and unpopular new idea about the nature of healing. The years that follow are lean and difficult. You do not return to your master's shop. You cannot. You find work where you can, but you begin to practice a new kind of medicine. The quiet, gentle medicine you learned at Bush Hill. You become known in the poorer quarters of the city as a different kind of healer. A man who does not bleed, who does not purge. A man who brings not a bag of sharp tools, but a pot of nourishing broth, a clean bandage, a cool cloth for a feverish head. Your practice is small. You are not respected by the city's great physicians. They consider you a quack, a French system sympathizer, a man who relies on old women's remedies. But your patients, you notice, have a remarkable tendency to survive. You grow older. The city of Philadelphia heals and grows around you. The great yellow fever epidemic of 1793 becomes a scar in the city's memory, a terrible story that parents tell their children, and the world of medicine, with the slow, grinding, almost geological pace of progress, begins to change. You live to see the old certainties begin to crumble. A new generation of doctors arises, men who are more skeptical of the ancient wisdom, more interested in observation and the new sciences of chemistry and biology. The heroic medicine of Dr. Benjamin Rush, with its violent purges and its massive bleedings, slowly begins to fall out of fashion. You are an old man now, a respected, if somewhat eccentric, physician in your own right. You have your own small clinic, your own apprentices, and you are known for your strange and obsessive insistence on one simple thing: cleanliness. You are sitting in your study one evening, reading a new medical journal from Europe. It is filled with the astonishing work of a new generation of scientists. They speak of things you can barely comprehend, of invisible microbes, of contagion, of germs. They are proving with their powerful new microscopes the very theories that men like Semmelweis were once driven mad for suggesting. An apprentice comes to you. He is a bright young man, full of the confident new science. He asks you about the old days. He has been reading the histories of the great 1793 epidemic. Master, he asks, his face a mask of genuine, modern confusion. Is it true? Is it true that the great Dr. Rush treated the yellow fever by bleeding his patients of more than half their blood? It is true. You say, but that is madness. The apprentice says, to drain the blood of a man who is already weak with fever and internal bleeding, it would kill him. It is the opposite of what we would do now. Yes, you say, it is the opposite. But why, yes? He was a great man, a brilliant man. How could he not see what he was doing? You look at the young man, at his earnest, certain face, and you try to explain a world that is almost impossible for him to understand. You try to explain the power of a 2,000-year-old theory, the weight of tradition, the authority of the ancient masters. You try to explain how a cure can feel so logical, so right, in the minds of the men who practice it, even as it is killing the patient before their very eyes. They were not evil men. You say they were simply certain, and certainty, in a physician, is a more dangerous thing than any disease. Later, you go to a wooden chest in the corner of your study. You open it. Inside are a few relics of your long life. And there, wrapped in a soft linen cloth, is a single, solitary tool from your old trade. It is the last lancet you ever owned. You did not throw this one into the river. You kept it as a reminder. You take it out. It is a beautiful object. Its steel still bright. Its point still sharp. You hold it in your old, steady hand. This small, elegant instrument, this tool of a failed science, this symbol of a medical dark age, you think of the thousands of veins it has opened, the river of blood it has let, all in the name of a cure that was a poison. Your apprentice comes into the room. He looks at the lancet in your hand with a kind of horrified fascination, as if it were a pagan idol or tool of torture. I have kept it all these years. You tell him. Your voice a quiet murmur. To remind myself of one thing, that the most important and most difficult thing a healer can ever learn is not what to do. It is to know when the time has come to do nothing at all. It is to know when to put down the knife. You place the last lancet back in its box, and you close the lid. Your long, bloody, and painful education is finally complete. You have lived through the age of heroic medicine, and you have survived to see the dawn of a gentler, wiser time. You look out your window at the peaceful, thriving city of Philadelphia, and you are at peace. The old doctor places the wooden box containing his last lancet on a high shelf in his study. He is done with it now. The ghosts of his past, the memory of the fevers and the fears and the terrible, misguided cures, are finally at rest. He looks out his window at the gaslights flickering on in the evening streets, at a city that is healed, a world that has, however slowly, learned from its mistakes. Let the image of him, an old man at peace in his quiet, book-lined room, be the final image of our story. Let the memory of his long and difficult journey fade. Like the last light of a fading day, your own journey is now over. Come back from the fever-ridden streets of 18th century Philadelphia, from the world of bleeding bowls and heroic certainties. Return to the calm, safe, and comfortable reality of your own room. The air here is still and quiet. The only sound is the soft, gentle rhythm of your own breathing. Feel the day and its stories release their hold on you. Feel the weight of your own body, a comforting, heavy presence, as you sink deeper into the softness of your bed. The darkness behind your eyelids is a warm and welcoming sanctuary, a place of profound and easy peace. There are no more fevers to fight, no more terrible choices to be made. There is only the simple, healing act of letting go. Allow your thoughts to soften and drift. Allow the world to fade away. You are safe, you are comfortable, and you are being carried on a slow, gentle, and silent tide, out into the deep and dreamless ocean of sleep. Rest now. Your long and trying day is done.